Dr. Doom is a fantasy, a man in armor who wants a throne, an empire, and above all, to be recognized as the smartest person alive. He is frightening because he announces himself. The real one announced nothing. He was a family doctor in a small town in the north of England. He was well liked. He made house calls. Patients described him as kind and as having a warm manner with the elderly. Over roughly 24 years, he killed around 250 of his own patients, and, unlike the fictional version, he never once explained why. This is the story of Harold Shipman, the real Dr. Doom. Welcome to the world of strange. Shipman qualified in Leeds and began working as a GP in 1974. For most of the following 2 decades, he practiced in Hyde, a town in Greater Manchester, where he ran a single doctor surgery and was, by every account, trusted completely. That trust is the whole story. It's not an incidental detail, it is the mechanism. The pattern, once anyone looked, was unmistakable. His patients, overwhelmingly older women, would be found dead at home, usually in a chair, usually fully dressed, usually in the middle of the day. There was rarely any sign of distress. And in a great many cases, Shipman had visited them shortly beforehand. He would then be the one to certify the death. He would tell the family a post-mortem wasn't necessary. And he would write down a cause, old age, heart failure, that nobody had any reason to question, because it had been written by their doctor. Here is the part that should genuinely unsettle you, because it isn't about him at all. In Britain at the time, the person who certified a death was very often the person who had been treating the patient. The paperwork required for cremation had to be countersigned by a second doctor. But that second doctor was signing on the basis of what the first one told them. There was no routine audit of how many patients a GP lost. No system flagged an unusual death rate. Shipman was not evading the checking mechanism. He was standing inside it, holding the pen. And people did notice. That's the hardest part of this to sit with. A local undertaker noticed that Shipman's patients were dying at an unusual rate and that they kept being found in the same posture. "Anyone can die in a chair," he said, "but not that many, and not all in the same way." A taxi driver who knew the town had his own suspicions. In March 1998, a doctor at another surgery in Hyde, Linda Reynolds, took those concerns seriously enough to raise them formally with the coroner. She had noticed how many cremation forms for elderly women Shipman was bringing to be countersigned. She said plainly that she thought he might be killing his patients. The police opened an investigation. It was given to officers with no experience of medical cases. They compared the causes of death against Shipman's own medical records, records he had written, and in some cases had already gone back and altered, found that they matched, and closed the case in April. 2 things they did not do. They did not check whether he had a criminal record, and they did not contact the General Medical Council. Because in 1975, early in his career, Shipman had been caught forging prescriptions to obtain a controlled drug for his own use. He was fined, briefly treated, and allowed to go back to practicing medicine. A single phone call in 1998 would have surfaced that. Between the police closing that investigation and Shipman's eventual arrest, he killed 3 more people. The last was Kathleen Grundy, 81 years old, a former mayor of Hyde, and by every description, a woman with more energy than people half her age, volunteering daily, constantly busy. On the 24th of June, 1998, she failed to turn up for a shift at a local club. Friends went to check on her and found her dead at home. Shipman had visited her that morning. He was the last person to see her alive. He told the family a post-mortem wasn't needed, and he certified the cause of death as old age. And then he did something so clumsy that it ended everything. He produced a forged will, leaving the bulk of her estate, some £386,000, to himself, and cutting out her daughter and grandchildren entirely. That daughter was Angela Woodruff. She was a solicitor. She had handled her mother's legal affairs for years. She knew immediately that the document was wrong, the language, the presentation, all of it. She did not accept it, and she did not let it go. She went to the police. This time, the investigation was competent. Kathleen Grundy's body was exhumed. Toxicology found a lethal dose of diamorphine. Shipman's house was searched, and police recovered a typewriter matching the one used to produce the forged will. He was arrested in September 1998. And once they started examining the medical records, they found something Shipman had not anticipated. He had gone back into the computerized patient files and altered them to support his version of events. But every one of those edits had been automatically time-stamped. He had left a log of his own lies. He was tried at Preston Crown Court on 15 specimen charges of murder, plus the forgery. On the 31st of January 2000, the jury convicted him on every count. The judge gave him a whole life term and told him his crimes were so serious that life would mean life. But 15 was only what could be proved in court. A public inquiry followed, chaired by a high court judge, Dame Janet Smith. It examined hundreds of deaths, took thousands of witness statements, and ran for years. Its findings were extraordinary. It concluded he had killed at least 215 people, 171 women and 44 men, and that the real total was somewhere around 250. His victims ranged in age from 41 to 93. The killing had begun in 1975, a year after he became a GP. It is worth stopping on that number rather than moving past it. 250 people, almost all of them at home, in their own front rooms, by someone they had opened the door to gladly. Shipman never confessed. He maintained his innocence to the end, refused to be psychiatrically assessed, and offered no account of himself whatsoever. In January 2004, the day before his 58th birthday, he took his own life in prison. So there is no motive. That is the honest ending. The inquiry could not establish one. Money explains the last case, and almost none of the others. The judge suggested it was possible he had simply become addicted to it, and then acknowledged that only he could have answered the question, and that he never would. Which brings us back to where we started. The fictional villain wants to be understood. He explains himself at length, because being recognized as brilliant is the entire point of him. Shipman gave the world nothing. No manifesto, no confession, no reason. He killed hundreds of people who trusted him, and then took the explanation with him. That is not a criminal mastermind. It is something considerably emptier and considerably worse. What came out of it was reform. Britain overhauled how deaths are certified and independently reviewed, tightened how controlled drugs are recorded and monitored, and changed how doctors are appraised and revalidated. Those systems exist, in the shape they exist, substantially because of him. And it's worth being clear about who actually stopped him. Not the police, who closed the case. Not the system, which was signing his paperwork. A retired man's widow's daughter who read a document, knew it was wrong, and refused to be told otherwise. 250 people died because a great many reasonable procedures assumed a doctor could be trusted. It ended because one person didn't assume anything at all.